All right, so this video is going to be about the card deck. Sorry for the glare here. The card decks, the 3 card decks that come with Forged by Fire. And these are reference decks which pertain closely to the rulebook. So everything that is in these card decks is in the rulebook. But oftentimes, especially because of the length of this rulebook, being a lengthy rulebook and all, having these quick reference cards is pretty handy to have. So I'm going to go over these and maybe some of the decisions I made when designing the game and when it comes to advanced tactics, victory points, and special abilities, and see what you guys think. So I got the game set up right here. And these are chits instead of pieces right now. The base game will come with chits as opposed to plastic pieces and such, just to keep the cost down. I'll go over how the game is set up and everything. Some of the setup stuff is wrong right now because I was moving some things around, but I will go over that in a separate video, what the starting setup is and the opening strategies and dynamics that are possible. But this video is just going to be about the cards themselves. So we have a special abilities deck. Now these are special abilities for each of the major powers in the game. Most of them have special abilities. The French have the most, then come the British, and they're on forward. Then we have advanced tactics. These pertain to what your generals can achieve throughout the game. So they give them extra boosts throughout the game. And there are 14 different advanced tactics that you can equip your generals with. And I'll go over that too. And then we have victory points. These are basically just the reference cards for the victory points themselves, which are found on the victory point tracker. So there's over 30 of them. You've got like Egyptian campaign, naval blockade, last stand, all these all going all the way down to the 1-pointers, which are like 12 key ports. And your victory points range from being worth 1 point, which you can see the Roman numeral 1 in there on the medal, up to 2, like Prussian conquest right there, and then up to 3 for like stuff like naval blockade, which is a hard one to get. So I could just go over those really quickly just to show you. I mean, I'm not going to go through each of these in depth, I would say. Man, that glare, holy cow. That glare is mean. Okay, so Kingdom of Naples. This is a 1-pointer right here. I'm not going to go over each and every one. But for example, it says control of Naples if you're not allied with the coalition miners. So the coalition miners are the teal pieces here. They start as part of the coalition. So if the French alliance or any power within the French alliance captures the territory of Naples right here, that would give them this victory point. So easy enough, right? But how do the coalition get that victory point? Because it's not worded in a way that helps them. Well, some of these victory points are caveated. They have where, if you're not allied with the coalition powers, but also if allied with the coalition miners, sorry, I said powers, coalition miners, control of Naples and have at least 5 or more land units there from another member of the same alliance. So the coalition miners, their units would not count. They control the coalition as a whole because the coalition miners are part of the coalition. They control Naples. Okay, you got that part, but you don't have 5 more units of, say, the British or the Austrians or the Prussians or anything like that, other members of the coalition. So it takes a little bit extra to get that victory point rather than just holding the territory. So that's, these victory points are a little bit more tricky that way. So you have to do a little bit to get those victory points. Kingdom of Italy. This one is control of Genoa, Parma Medina. So I'll show you this: Genoa, Parma Medina, Lombardy, and Venice. You'd have to control all of those. Now, to start the game, the Austrians control Lombardy, that region, but they don't control any of these. So, you got Illyrian provinces, the last stand on this one. This one's very conditional. This is, I can get to this one another time, but basically I can make a whole video on just the victory points if you want. But that one's basically if the French are losing by the end of the game, they can conduct one last final battle, and it must include Napoleon, the Napoleon piece, and it must be a major battle. And if they win it, they get 3 victory points. If they lose it, the coalition gets 3 more victory points. So it's like a last-ditch attempt for the French alliance to win the game at the very end. It's a really cool idea. I love it. The only time I've seen this happen is in one of my own solo play tests of the game, and the French did win, and they won the game by 1 point. Habsburg influence. Now, this is a 2-pointer. It's a really tricky one to get. This is probably the last one I go over, but I'll just kind of flip through these. But control of at least 7 original Austrian territories, if not allied with Austria. So, for example, France would have to control, at least 7 territories of Austria. So maybe the Austrian Netherlands, which is an original Austrian territory, Lombardy, Tyrol, Carinthia, Carniola, Austria, Vienna, Bohemia, and maybe one other. And they would get Habsburg influence and get 2 diplomacy tokens for it. If allied with Austria, control all original Austrian territories, with Austria controlling at least 6 territories adjacent to original territories. So adjacent territories to original territories would mean like an expansion of their empire into the nearby territories. So like Venice, Bavaria, Saxony, Genoa, all of these. So it represent the Habsburg influence growing. So then the coalition with Austria on it would get the 2 VPs. However, let's say Austria was a member of the French alliance. That can possibly happen in this game. Then Austria could get that victory point for the French alliance. That would be interesting too. I don't think I've ever seen that happen yet. Maybe it has. I'm not sure. I've had many games of this. So yeah, I'll just flip through these now. So you got Prussian conquest, French Republic. That's like if you knock out all the French rebellions within France, if you're France. You can get that VP if as the coalition, the royalists, or the coalition takes Paris. So Confederation of the Rhine, which is control of all the German states, Peninsular War, control of enough of the Iberian Peninsula. You got the Caribbean, control of enough of the Caribbean, of course. Helvetic Republic, which is control of Switzerland. Hegemony is control of 4 enemy capital cities. Duchy of Warsaw is control of all of the Polish-Lithuanian territories up there. Got the Danish Straits. Far East, which is control basically of India, Caucasus and Middle East, Balkan expansion, 10 key ports. So your key ports are these marked with the anchor icon. If you control 10 of those territories that contain those, you'll get a VP. Russian campaign, it's a 3-pointer. It's a very hard one to get. You have to control 8 Russian territories if you're at war with them. Or if you're not at war with them and they're your ally, they need to control all their original territories and 15 more territories. It's a hard one. It's really hard. Naval blockade, another difficult one to get. Rhineland, Mediterranean, the American colonies. So you need to control enough of the New World. War of 1812. Now, this one isn't awarded till the end of the game, but if the United States wins the War of 1812, and winning means like controlling more territories than the British do. So it's an isolated conflict between British Canada and the United States, and nobody else can get involved. If the United States controls more territories total between all these territories, they are considered to be the victor. If the British do, they're considered to be the victor. So at the start, the British have the advantage. They have more territories right at the start. But it's going to take the British landing more forces into Canada to combat the United States to keep them at bay. So yeah, that point is awarded to the French alliance if the United States wins the War of 1812, only because the United States is not a member of the French alliance. It wasn't involved in the Napoleonic Wars directly, but it would be considered a blow to British prestige if they were to lose the War of 1812 after 20 years prior losing the American Revolution. So, and if the British win it, of course, the coalition would get that victory point at the very end. You have Scandinavia, which is control basically of all of the Scandinavian territories, of course. You have Kingdom of Sardinia, Low Countries, which is control of these 2 territories right on the northwest coast of Europe. You have Egyptian campaign. That's a difficult one to get, let alone hold, especially because it typically will oftentimes bring in the Ottoman Empire against you. And then 12 key ports instead of 10 key ports. So those are all the victory points right there. And yeah, I did a lot of research on these, and there was, some victory points in the past that I had gotten rid of or meshed into others or folded into them rather. But right now, I've been playing with this victory point set for over a year, and it's worked out really well so far, so I'm really liking it. Okay, so the next deck I want to go over is special abilities. So this is the one where like a lot of historical flair gets added into the game. And let's see here. Russia has two of them. They have Russian winter and Russian expansion. So Russian winter, you know this one. If you know Napoleonic history, you know the Russian winter. Basically, if enough Russian territories have been taken, they can basically the Russian winter gets incorporated. So essentially, the Russian winter is supposed to represent basically the scorched earth tactics that the Russians employed when Napoleon invaded Russia and marched into Moscow, as well as the merciless attacks from the Cossacks and hitting their supply lines, logistics, and of course the Russian winter itself and the cruelty of it. So basically what happens is that if enough Russian territories are taken, the Russians get to roll 20 dice at the end of their turn, and any hits that they get, now this is odds of 2 or less, any hits that they get are dead units for the attacker. So the attacker gets to choose what their casualties are, but yeah, it's quite deadly. So you got to be careful invading Russia for sure. Russian expansion is basically the Russians get a bonus income for taking certain territories. Now, these are territories that historically Russia did take during the Napoleonic Wars, or was, having tensions with their neighbors about and had ambitions to take. So that would include the Persian territories. They had, tensions with the Ottomans at this point. Moldavia, Bessarabia, this region was a region that they did take control of at one point. Finland itself. However, Sweden and Russia are often allies in this game, so the Russians would not be able to take Finland, but if they were enemies, they would be able to take Finland. And what was the other one? Malta, actually. Russia was a protectorate at one point of Malta, believe it or not. And they actually had some tensions with the British over influence in Malta, which is super interesting little nugget of history that people don't often know about. So those are two right there, or that the Russians have. Let's go to the British. So the British have some good ones here. The British have 4. I'll move over to here real quick. Oh, that glare. Man, that glare is terrible. Okay. And I didn't go with a high gloss card either. Crazy. Okay, so they have foreign regiments, Admiral Nelson, which is like a hero unit in this game, Far East trade, and British subsidies, perhaps the most important of the 4. So going over to foreign regiments, and I think if I angle it this way, it's a little better. Foreign regiments. So basically, in this game, whenever you build new units, you have to place them in your original territories, and they have to have a traceable land path, like a traceable path back to your capital. And you can build land units there. However, the British, they can build up to 10 infantry outside of their original, outside of territories connected to their capital. So they can build them in their colonies, essentially. This helps them with logistics because they have colonies all over the board. The British, they have, they're in India, they've got Gibraltar, they got the Caribbean, they got Canada, they have Hanover here in Europe. So they have a bunch of places where it would be helpful, where they can build some extra units. So that's where foreign regiments comes in. They have Admiral Nelson, which is basically the Napoleon of the sea during the era. So that as early as round 2, they can place Admiral Nelson. And I wish I could reach it right now, but I have the piece for it. And you get to replace one of your naval units as Britain, one of your starting naval units, with Admiral Nelson, which is like a super unit, essentially. Very valuable piece to have on the board. Basically, wherever he goes, you're going to have a very good chance of having naval dominance as the British. Far East trade. So if the British have a certain number of ships in each of these Far East sea zones, they will receive bonus income, sort of to demonstrate their growing trade with the Far East during the Napoleonic Wars. Because the Far East and the Pacific and whatnot is not included on this map, I wanted some way to represent that added wealth and trade that the British got during the period. And I think this does it very well. So now if you don't have a certain number of ships there, like you have just like maybe one ship in each sea zone, you get no added bonus. If you have no ships in each of these sea zones as the British, you will get actually a negative, you'll get negative 10 gold per turn to represent that other major powers are scooping up that additional trade instead of the British. So there is an impetus to get involved over there. And next up, are British subsidies. This is the most important card, I would say, for the British. This allows the British to use their money to purchase diplomacy tokens. Now, I haven't gone over the rules yet in this game, but diplomacy tokens are what this game runs on. So basically, use those tokens to influence diplomacy with the other major powers. So that's how Britain can keep major powers in the coalition fighting France, or prevent France from accumulating allies themselves. So it's so important. And the British, they spend 50 gold and they can get a diplomacy, one diplomacy token, and it's an incredibly important aspect of the game and the history of the Napoleonic Wars themselves. I mean, the British were at certain points bankrolling the Austrians, the Prussians, whoever, to stay in the war and fight the French, because the British were not known as a land continental power. They just weren't. They were a naval and mercantile power, but not a land power. So they needed the continental allies to stay in the coalition and fight France. So that's where these British subsidies are represented. Next up, we have Prussian expansion. So the Prussians only have this one, and it is to sort of represent their growing empire, especially this kind of, I think this is even more pertainable to after the Napoleonic Wars with the Franco-Prussian Wars and how the Prussians expanded. And it also helps them as a game balancer because basically for each territory, each Polish-Lithuanian or German territory that they take, they get +2 gold at the end of their turn. And it helps sort of balance them because their starting economy is pretty small in comparison to the Austrians, the Russians, the French. So I think it's a great game balancer. And sometimes Prussia can get really powerful in this game. So it's kind of fun. So there's that one. You have Spanish revolts. So you know your Napoleonic history. The Spain was Napoleon's ulcer. So basically, if a certain number of original Spanish territories are taken, or if Madrid falls, the Spanish revolts will be in full effect. So basically what happens is that at the end of the Spain's turn, they roll for each territory that is either contested or controlled by an enemy, and more Spanish infantry will pop up representing revolts. And it can get quite nasty in the Iberian Peninsula and really bog down whoever Spain's enemy is. If Spain's a member or an ally of France, and Britain and the coalition miners are invading Spain, it can really slow them down in their ability to take over Spain. So this is a really powerful one for them to have. Most of Spain is our coastal territories where the British can invade. So it's quite easy to invade Spain, very difficult to defend it, but they have this built-in Spanish revolt effect here, which is powerful. So great one for Spain. And then we have one for the coalition miners, Portuguese royal family. So if all of the coalition minor capitals fall, which are Turin, Naples, and Lisbon, this coalition miners can basically, to represent the Portuguese royal family fleeing to Brazil, they can basically have a made-up capital in Brazil and begin building units there. So they basically have like a fail-safe if they lose all their capitals, which is very possible that can happen in this game. So that's a little fail-safe there for the coalition miners. And then we have one for Austria. So this is called Battlefield Experience. Battlefield Experience, basically, if the Austrians are involved in at least 3 major battles, whether they won them or not, they receive some free advanced tactic tokens. So the way you would acquire these advanced tactics, which that's the next deck here, is you purchase advanced tactics tokens. And if you get a successful advancement, then you can choose an advanced tactic to apply to one of your generals. And these are the little tactic chits here too. And so they'll get 3 of those for free, even if they haven't even won the major battles. And it's to represent, how they were getting beat up in the early portion of the Napoleonic Wars, and they started to catch on and reform some of their strategies and their tactics. And they learned from Napoleon and all their losses, and they became better. So that's to represent that for the Austrians. Now we get to the French ones. So there's a ton of them for the French. The French have a lot of special abilities in this game. They just got so much going because, they are the sole power in the French alliance at the very start of the game. Nobody is allied with them. Oftentimes they'll bring in Spain. Sometimes they'll bring in Denmark, Norway. Sometimes even Prussia. But at the beginning of the game, it's just them. So they have a lot they have to do. So I'll go over these a little bit one by one. The most important one, I would say, levy en masse. So as early as round 2, each of the mainland French territories here that they controlled at the start of their turn, at the end of their turn, they can plop down 8 free infantry, which is huge. So the actual levy en masse, they raised, I think it was over 800,000 troops in 1 year, which is insane. If the French were somehow to control all their original territories at the start of their second turn, which is very, very hard to do, you often don't have all of them, that's, I think, 90 or 100 free infantry or something. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so it's 80 infantry for free. They get plopped down. That is utterly massive. But the odds of that happening incredibly low. You're probably going to have only 5 or 6 of those territories, but still, that's a lot of free infantry. And they need it because they have basically the whole world trying to stop them. So next up. Let's see, a good one to cover next would be Napoleon. I'm trying to find my Napoleon card. Here we go, Napoleon. So, just like Admiral Nelson for the British, you have Napoleon for the French. As early as round 3, you get to place a special piece on the board who replaces one of your generals, and he is Napoleon. And I have a Napoleon chit, but I gotta go find that. I didn't prepare it for this video. But Napoleon gets placed down on the board, and what's special about him is he gets 4 free advanced tactics to start the game. For free. He doesn't even get tokens. He just gets to pick 4 tactics for free. And that is very case dependent on what your strategy is as the French, which that really keeps you on your toes as the coalition, because you don't, wherever Napoleon goes, you're going like, okay, that's where the main thrust is going to be, and it's scary. And you got all those levy and mass infantry coming, and it's daunting to face. So this, I would say, is probably the second most important card for the French. Next up, let's see. Louisiana Purchase. That's a big one. So if the French become allies with the Spanish, immediately during that diplomacy phase, because the diplomacy phase happens at the top of the round before the first turn gets taken. So if the French ally the Spanish immediately relinquish control of Louisiana territory to the French. And then at that point, the French have a decision to make right then and there. Do they keep Louisiana territory, or do they sell it to the United States? And 99 out of 100 times, you're going to sell it to the United States because you get 100 gold for free right then and there to use on your upcoming turn. And since the French go first in the turn order after the diplomacy phase, the French get $100 right there, 100 gold rather. And that's incredible. So if you have that 100, that's where you could rebuild some of your more expensive units like cavalry and heavy artillery and all that kind of stuff. So really, really valuable one to have, especially early in the game when the French are kind of in their weak spot. Okay, next up, Dutch Republic. So the Dutch were an interesting political thing that I had to consider when devising the game. Technically, the Dutch, so up here, I have them marked here. Let me move these pieces out of the way. The Dutch were technically a member of the coalition at the start of the Napoleonic Wars / French Revolutionary Wars. And once the French took over the Dutch Republic, basically the British started attacking Dutch colonies, because they figured that the Dutch Navy was going to fall into the French hands, and that was going to be a great threat to them and their naval primacy. So the way that the Dutch Republic works in this game is that if the French take the territory of the Dutch Republic, let's just say they took it, and they hold it for one full round to their next French round, all Dutch colonies and units will flip to becoming French units. So those naval units that are docked in Dutch Republic, you have a ship of the line, frigate, and a sloop, those all become French naval units, as well as the colonies of Aruba, Curacao, if I'm saying that correctly, Suriname over here in South America. You can't really see, but I got the units there. These units will become French and control the territory, as well as Ceylon over here in the Far East. So it's a pretty important card too, I would say, because it gets the French some more naval power to combat the British. The British are very difficult to take on navally. Even if you've got the Spanish on your side, it's still tough. But it is possible. So with the Dutch Republic, however, that also opens up the possibility of the French and the Spanish taking the Caribbean VP. So, all right, next one. Next one is German conscript. We have all the conscript cards. So we have 3 of those. German conscripts, Polish conscripts, and Italian conscripts. Okay, so basically what these entail is if you take certain victory points, like Confederation of the Rhine, Duchy of Warsaw, and Kingdom of Italy, this glare, you get free units that get to be plopped down instantly in one of those territories that makes up that victory point. So if the French, for example, take the Duchy of Warsaw victory point, or sorry, when I say the French, I mean the French alliance. So if any member of the French alliance or combination of members of the French alliance take the Duchy of Warsaw, you'll get 10 free infantry and 5 free light cavalry that get placed down in one of those territories, or you could spread them out amongst the territories. Kingdom of Italy, you get 10 free infantry if you take the Kingdom of Italy VP, and you get to place them in any combination of these 4 territories. And then Confederation of the Rhine is any 7 of these German states that I'm outlining with my finger. And you get 15 free infantry. So those are huge. So it's hard for the French to overextend themselves sometimes to get some of these victory points, but there's a reward to doing it. So very valuable. I found that it doesn't make things too overly powerful. I mean, the French need as much help as they can get up until maybe halfway through the game. That's what I would say. So these cards are really valuable. So I'm going to push these over. Next up, we got 2 more cards. We got Emergency Conscription and American Expansion. So I'll start with American Expansion. So this is mainly a balancer card. This is one of the newer ones I've added to the deck. So basically, if anyone tries to ally the United States without the War of 1812 starting, so this is before the War of 1812, if anyone tries to ally the United States, it costs 9 diplomacy tokens. That's a lot of tokens. In this game, 9 tokens is a lot. And oftentimes you don't get a lot of reward for it because they don't have the strongest starting army and navy. They can help out with disrupting things in the Caribbean, perhaps, or taking some American colonies, but that's about it. But here's the thing: if the British empty out most of their garrisons in Canada, the French can use this card to ally the United States for only 2 tokens, which is really cool because then you can get the United States on your side. If the British are weak enough in Canada, the United States will get greedy and they'll be like, you know what, I'm taking Canada, or some combination of that. Or if you've got United States and Spain on your side, now you can invade all of Canada and you could perhaps start nibbling at the Caribbean. So the British have to be wary of having too weak of a garrison in Canada for this card. So there's that one. And finally, we get to the last one here. This is a long video. We have Emergency Conscription. So this is like a fail-safe game balancer type of card that I put in for the French. I think I skipped over Political Leverage, that card as well. Oh yeah, it's over here. Right there. There was 2 more cards. Okay, so these are both game balancer types of cards. So basically, if the French are at only 6 victory points halfway through the game, they can start using their diplomacy tokens that they have they can start using them to get free units on the board instead of using them for actual diplomacy. So it's basically what it represents is, okay, we've got this diplomatic sway that we have built up. We've got some favors to call in. We need more conscripts. We need to squeeze more conscripts out of our colonies or territories we control or out of our allies. So basically, if the French are in trouble, they could start using this card, essentially. That's what it's for. Same thing with political leverage. So if by round 6 they have 6 or fewer victory points, they can start spending money like the British to acquire diplomacy tokens, but it costs them a little extra. So they have something as a fail-safe as well. So this video has gone really long, way longer than I thought, but that's the 2 card decks. We got our victory points and we got our special abilities. The special abilities, I think, is where that's where the juice is at in this game with historical flair. And then we got advanced tactics. So these will be quick. These are just some of the tactics that you can acquire throughout the game and apply to your generals. So let's go right here. Let's go rifling, grand battery. So you'll notice there's a color code to these with some of these metals. Sorry, that glare, man, let me try this light up ahead. That helps. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, I should have done that from the start. So we got rifling, grand battery, core system, harassment. You'll notice there's a different color for each of these medals on here. You have green, purple, blue, and red. Anything red pertains to infantry advancements. Anything blue pertains to artillery advancements. Anything green is cavalry related, and anything purple is sort of like miscellaneous. It has to do with something that's either logistical or financial, it's mostly logistical. So you have shrapnel here. I'm not going to go over each of these in depth because you'd have to kind of know some of the rules and how battles work. Rapid movement, so allows your generals to carry their army an additional space instead of 2 spaces. Local conscription, where you can essentially roll at the end of your turn to see if you get some free units. Shrapnel gets you some extra rolls with your artillery. Harassment allows you to basically roll twice with your cavalry, but that you get rolls at lower odds, and you basically pick off, do like an instant kill with certain units. Core system, incredibly valuable, especially for the French, in mobilizing units into space really quickly. Grand battery basically makes, if you have a bunch of artillery, the more artillery you have, the more powerful that this card is. Rifling makes it so if you have skirmish tactics, which skirmish tactics is the prerequisite card to this, you have to have that card first. Basically, your infantry get to roll twice, or sorry, not twice, but they get to roll at higher odds, and they get the instant kill units. So those units that they kill don't even get to roll in battle. That's what skirmish tactics does, and then rifling enhances it further. So it's really cool. I like those 2 cards together when I play personally. Field works allows you to absorb the first 3 hits in a battle, another really important one. Rapid defense, often never used, allows you to actually have more endurance in a battle, essentially, so you can pull like neighboring units from adjacent territories into the battle. It's actually kind of a useful one. You just haven't seen it much. It was an older one that I had that I scrapped, and then most recently brought it back, so that could be why I haven't seen it in action yet. We have Master of Terrain, which basically gives your artillery an extra roll in battle, similar in effect to skirmish tactics or rifling. We have Plunder, so you get to roll dice at the end of your turn. If you're in a new territory outside your original territories that you control, you can get some extra money. So plundering the territory. And then lastly, I'm trying to pick it up, we have Elite Cavalry. So Elite Cavalry, really, really valuable one. Basically allows you to absorb a hit in flank combat. And when you have cavalry units that are so expensive in this game, being able to absorb a hit and not lose a cavalry unit, that's huge. That's really, really huge to have. So that's one that I often see employed a real lot. Elite Cavalry, I see a lot. Rapid movement, core system, field works. Those are the most popular ones I'd say so far. But they're all great. They're all great ones. It all really depends on what your strategy is. You know, that's what's great about these, is that it's not random which one you get. When you get an advanced tactic advancement, you get to choose which one you want. And you can really sort of like tailor your army to the tactics you've employed if you want to. So you could sort of say, I want to go really heavy with artillery and get the tactics I want to get are grand battery, shrapnel, and master of terrain, and really, really enhance the punch I get out of those artillery. And that's what's so cool about the game, is that you can do that. You can really tailor your strategy, and then the other player can try and counter it and have a different philosophy and say, hey, I want to go really heavy with my infantry and really push their advantage, or my cavalry, for that example. I want to build a lot of cavalry and get an elite cavalry and just really outflank you and make it so that, you get devastated with all these breakthroughs that I'm getting. So breakthroughs, I'm not going to go into these rules right now, but breakthroughs essentially mean your cavalry busts through the flank and they get to roll double dice. So they get to roll twice, essentially, against the enemy center, which is devastating. So it's, in ways, it's more powerful than artillery at times. So yeah. And I didn't get to show you guys the advanced tactics chits here. So each of those cards, I have a chit here. And what you do is that, let's say I have a general who got grand battery and got harassment. Let's say you got both of those, right? I would take that general. So I'm going to take him right here. Let's see, he's a French general. I'm going to put those on that block here. and put his general piece over, and those are the tactics he has. So that if we move into a battle, if your enemy's like, okay, which tactics do you have? You just pull it off and say, okay, I got grand battery and harassment. Okay, cool. Or what you can do, instead of putting them with the general piece, you can just put them in one of these army board slots here. So if you have sort of a spillover effect where you've got so many units and you're just like, I don't have enough space in the territory, you just move them over here and you just put those right there. And that's it. And then you have your units there. Let's just say, I don't know, I put them all off to the side, but if you had a bunch of units, you'd put them here and you'd be able to tell which tactics you have quite easily. So, and these color blocks are just there to differentiate the generals from themselves. So I've got red, blue, and green here for the French because they start with 3 generals. Wow, this went really long. I thought this was gonna be like a 15-minute video and it's like 35, so. But let me know what you think of all that. The advanced tactics, special abilities, and the victory points. I'm hoping to start a public game of this very soon. I'm waiting to hear back from Jonah to see if he's ready to go. But I'll be starting playing with the chits just to get a feel for them and how the base game feels with just chits. But I do have some 3D printed pieces coming. The Johns are working on some for me, and I hope that I can, maybe mid-game, I'll replace all the chits with those new pieces and see how that looks and play with those. And I'm sure it's going to feel great. So, all right, stay tuned for more Forged by Fire updates. I do have some Kings and Kaisers updates coming too. So I have not forgotten about Kings and Kaisers. It's been a while since I've talked about it, but I have some things working with that, as well as some ideas about the Kings and Kaisers 3rd tournament, possibly, but with a twist. And again, I'll talk about that another time. And then I have another game I'm working on too. So, all right, stay tuned for updates.